Hello, my name is Chris Keyack with Keyack Technology Solutions. In this video today, we're going to talk about production codes in Tekla Structures and Tekla PowerFab. In PowerFab, if I come up here to Maintenance, and then I go to Production Control, and I go to Global Production Code Maintenance, that'll open up this dialog box here, and you can see some out-of-the-box default production codes that PowerFab includes. Now, the idea here is that it allows fabricators to essentially segregate or group similar types of assemblies together for coming up with your planned production rates for tying and mapping out your schedule for your shop hours and looking at the schedule for the project. So we know that, for instance, a carrier beam or a girder is going to potentially have different labor and a different production rate than, say, an infill beam. And so here what fabricators can do is they can create these production codes and tag that to different assemblies and members that are coming into production control, so that way they can plan out their schedule and they can kind of see how much of a certain type of work is going to be funneling through the shop on a job versus other types. And that also lets them look for any kind of bottlenecks in production and then also kind of pull back from their delivery dates and make sure that they're getting started on the higher labor items or the longer production rate items before others. The other thing that this allows you to do is if you have tagged your items in your estimate project in PowerFab with the same production codes, then you can actually do averages and take that information from estimating data and use that in production control for items that have the same production codes to plan out and compare things between what's actually happening in production and back to estimates. Now, I want to make a couple points here. The first thing is that I sometimes hear requests from fabricators is, well, I want the detailer to tag every single individual stick in their model with something that matches a individual unique code for every stick over in estimating. Listen, that's not really probably very feasible. Trying to do that to get this one-to-one relationship and a full granular link between estimating and production is not very feasible unless a highly accurate estimodel is being built and tagged by the detailer and then continued to be used all the way throughout the evolution of the project, which in most cases just doesn't happen. The other thing that I want fabricators to be aware of is if you make these codes to have too many of them or too complicated, and the criteria is not very clear for the detailer to tag those, whether you're using estimating and linking with estimating or just purely looking at this in a production control point of view, if you make it too complicated or too many, maybe more than 5 or 10, you're running the risk that the detailer is not going to do this correctly and they may not quality control it, right? So if production codes are important to you and you really want to depend on them for planning, then you want to really make sure that you don't have more than 5 or 10. Keep them very tight, keep it very clear what needs to be done, and then reinforce that through your detailing manual standards or your project kickoffs that, hey guys, you need to treat these production codes just like you would treat a material grade or a profile size when you're tagging parts in the Tekla model. So that way they can understand that, hey, this is super important. It's a very important property. You use it for planning. What is its purpose? Clearly identify what the different codes are for and just reinforce that the detailer needs to follow those. So I just wanted to make sure that fabricators understand, because this is a really big deal and I totally get it. You want to plan out what's going on, and then you want to be able to track what is actually happening in production, compare that against what you estimated. That's what every fabricator is looking for from PowerFab, just from a planning and, knowing the difference between estimate versus actual. And you just got to make sure you keep that process very simple and the instructions simple for detailing, so that way they can help you out with this. Okay, so now I'm in Tekla Structures, and let's assume that we're in the estimating phase of the project. Okay, so I've actually just put sticks only in here, and then if I just go to this beam, I right click and say user defined attributes, or if you just double click on a beam, you'll see the properties over here on the right, and you can go to the user defined attributes dialog box. Now I'm going to uncheck all the checkboxes and I'll go to the parameters tab here, and if you just want to keep things super simple, no customization required, the user field 1, 2, 3, and 4 will export by default across to Tekla PowerFab. And if you're using an estimating model, you're probably going to export an IFC file. And 1, 2, 3, and 4 user fields will export. Now, I've got 2 separate codes here. I'm choosing to use user field 1 actually as the labor code. So this is different. This is actually kind of saying connection material and labor additions, and that's a different field specifically for estimating in PowerFab. Then here, user field 2, I'm using this and tagging the model for the production codes. So this here means carrier beam. And if I go on this one and press get, this is actually infill beam here. And then on columns, if I press get on that, let's see if that'll tag it. And there we can see that it's got the C1 for a 1-story column, right? And you can see that I've got I here for the labor code for that there's one welded base plate that's going to be on there. So I just wanted you to see that with no customization, you can use user field 1 and 2 and just communicate with the fabricator. What are you expecting those to be as the detailer, and what are they expecting to map that from in PowerFab? And then you just can fill those in with no customization. Now, once I've got those set here in the estimate, then I would come up and I would go to the Tekla menu, and I would go to export. I would go to IFC, and I can load up the Tekla PowerFab settings here. And these property sets in Tekla PowerFab, they include that user field 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I can just say export. Now I've already done this before, I'm just gonna say export again, so that way it creates that file, and that's here in this Tekla PowerFab subfolder of the model, and there's the name of that actual file that I can then import into PowerFab. Okay, so now I'm back here in PowerFab, and I'm going to import that IFC file into an estimate job. So I'll go to File, Import. I will then choose IFC underneath Estimating. I can then browse to that file here. So we'll just go into Tekla Structures Models, and I will go to my Tekla PowerFab Training, Estimating, and then Estimate Production and Tekla PowerFab, and there it is. There is that IFC file, and I'll go ahead and import that in. So I'll just press Import here. Okay, and then it's gonna basically ask me to either create a job or link to an existing job. I'll just link to this existing estimating job that I've created. And I'm just gonna go ahead and tell it to delete everything that's in there and just start over and just re-import everything. Okay, so now here's the mapping screen. So this is the key, right? If I scroll down here, I'm looking for user field 1 and user field 2. So user field 1, I said that I'm gonna actually set that as the labor code. So if I come in here and just scroll down until I find the labor code, and I might even be able to just type it, there we go, labor code, and press that and say set field mapping. And it's saying that user field 1 in the IFC file will tie to the Tekla PowerFab labor code. Now this is going to be production codes. So I'll just type in production code, and there it is. So I'll just go to that drop down, select on that, press set mapping, and there we go. Now user field 2 in the IFC is going to be set to production code in the estimate. So I'll press OK. And looks like everything's good. I'm not going to link to a Trimble Connect project here. Everything's successful, no errors in the log. We'll go to estimating. I'll then go to that job that I just imported into. And there we go. You can see in the column on the right, I actually changed the display to show this. And then it's also over here on the right. But you'll see that there's the labor code, you know, punched both ends for shear tabs. And then I have my production code here for that. This is an infill beam versus a one tier column. And then I have some carrier beams. And so then I can use that, and it will remember that in order for me to tie and plan that out in production later on the project. All right, so I'll close that down, and then we'll go back to Tekla Structures and look at the detailing model. Okay, so now I'm back in Tekla Structures, and in this particular case, yes, I'm using the same model that I started with in estimating, and I just applied connections and base plates and things to that, and so the codes are already here on the pieces. And that is one workflow, but not the typical workflow. So I just wanted you to see that you need to tell the detailer that they need to tag the model in some way and export that information across to you. If you want to keep things simple, if you're using modeling and building estimate models as well, and keep things just in your mind very similar from what the detailer is giving you versus what you did on your estimating model, you could just tell them to use the same user field, right? So here, I'm just going to say that I'm going to use user field 2 to put in my production codes in the detailing model, even if it is a totally separate and different model that the detailer created from whatever you may have done with the estimating model, or even if the estimating model doesn't exist. Okay, so with that being said, I'll select on my drawings here. I'll then go to the Tekla menu, and I'm now doing a for fabrication detailing export to PowerFab. So I'll select the export to Tekla PowerFab option here, and we'll go ahead and say from selected drawings in the drawing list, we'll have all of this, including the information we want. If we want to include the drawing files that we've plotted out or use the CNC files from this folder, we can. And I'll just go ahead and say export to Tekla PowerFab. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and say yes to save the model so we can include the model in the package. And then once that's actually done, you'll see here that it just created that package right now. And I'm going to import that PFXT into PowerFab. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to File, Import, and I will go to PowerFab Exchange here under Production Control, and then I can browse to the file here that I'm going to work with. So I'll just go to my Tekla PowerFab training, Production Control, and I'll go to the model here, the detailing model, and I'll select on this new PFXT package that I just created. I'll then go ahead and say Import here, and I should have a job that I've already created that I can import into, so I'll go ahead and select that. And then I should actually have the estimate and everything already tied, but down here, if I say tie the estimate job to this, and then also a project management job is required, we can tie that all together. Now I'm just gonna go ahead and say save. And again, I'm gonna just do the delete existing job and re-import all, so that way this is kind of seen from scratch. And I'll just go ahead and say yes to delete that. And I'm gonna say no to the project management job for the moment, no to link to Trimble Connect. And I do not want to use some previous import mapping settings because I want to show you this. So I'm going to actually highlight this. Look at that. There's user defined 1 and 2. Now, I probably don't care about the labor code here, so I'm not going to focus on that like I did on the estimate, but I am going to care about the production codes. So there's my C1, CB, and my IFB. Now for infill beam, carrier beam, and then one story or first tier column. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to look for production code, and I'll select that, press set mapping, and now that's going to be tied in here based on this detailing import into production control. So I'll just go ahead and say okay here, and then this looks like it's just giving me a message about the job number mismatch, so I'll just say okay. Then I get the preview of just basically everything that's importing, and I'm just going to go ahead and go through, and nothing's on hold. Everything gets imported in, and it looks like no errors. Import completed. I'll then go to my production control jobs. I'll open this up. And then we can see that the production codes have been imported from detailing. And again, now you can use that basically for planning out your shop hours, right? You can tie this to schedule within PowerFab and start to map out your planned production. And again, if you're tying it between estimating and production control, then those production codes can be used to tie that together.